Welcome back to Raised by Giants Illuminated Insights discussion. We are live. Welcome everyone in the chat. Good to see you guys. Any moderators or members out there? We have a really great discussion for you guys here tonight that I've been really excited for. But a quick reminder, super chats and super stickers are available. Also, PayPal and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description as well and are a great way to help support the show and my work. And a big thank you to everyone that's contributed to help support the show. Really appreciate each and every one of you. Couldn't do this without your guys' support. And a shout out to Chloe for the $5 super sticker from my roundtable discussion the other day. Really appreciate your kindness and generosity and support of the show, Chloe. Means a lot to me. And to Jeremy for a kind and generous $10 PayPal donation. Really appreciate you, my friends. So joining us today is Andy Rouse from the Deep Share podcast, here to talk to us about aliens, extraterrestrials, and the community in general. Andy, how's it going, my friend? It's good to see you.
Good to see you, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I was on your show a while back, and we really clicked, and I think we click even more now, and we're seeing almost the exact same things and have come to almost the exact same conclusions separately, which is the logical conclusion I think people should come to when they've gone deep enough into UFOs and extraterrestrials, the whole hypothesis. See, what I've found, Andy, is people in the community always like to cite the Vermanas and the Vedic texts to prop up the extraterrestrial hypothesis. Another one that people always like to cite is the Book of Ezekiel and the Book of Enoch. Now, I know you've done a lot of study when it comes to this kind of theorizing and hypothesis. What have you discovered?
Oh man, so much, dude. Well, and I will say that I do believe that you and I are on similar missions, if you will, for sure. Yeah, it's all humans for sure. But man, where to start? Well, basically 2 years ago or so, probably about 2.5 years ago, I really started on this new journey where for a couple decades, I was Mr. Ancient Aliens. I was all about all of those same theories. And it's easy to do if you just don't look any further. You know, it's easy to jump on those bandwagons, and they are kind of convenient hypotheses to be made. At least in terms, we're talking in terms of our mythology that's written down already. There are people out there that have some pretty interesting ideas about, possible visitors or whatever from long, long before that has more to do with geological data and stuff like that. I'm definitely open-minded, but not when it comes to what's already written down. So I attacked this thing from ancient history mostly, even though I was totally immersed in the, disclosure process that's been going on slowly but surely here and there for so long. I was always fascinated with the ancient world for many different reasons. So a little over 2 years ago, I discovered something called the Bach Saga. And not to go too deep into that, it's a whole cosmology of its own. It's an alternative history, but it's a very compelling one. And what it gave me, most importantly, was it kind of returned the idea of Occam's razor to my brain. It gave some linguistic evidence that would suggest a lot of the traditions and mythologies and folklore that we have come to know for hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of years. It's not exactly as it's given to us, and it's more literal yet more human than anything else. I often see, well, I mean, all of us do, this debate, this dialectic between literal translations and allegorical translations. And they're kind of both wrong and both right at the same time. Because
what a pickle.
The literalist, like let's take for instance just this, and I'm generalizing, definitely. I'm not kind of specifically poking fun at anybody, but just in general, the literalist will assume that what the humans saw, they wrote down literally. Okay, I do too. The problem is they still wrote it down allegorically. And the literalist will take the allegory as the reality. That's kind of how I frame it in my head. So basically, I've gone on this adventure looking into old words and how languages were put together and where they were and what connected certain groups. And I've just basically discovered that there's two things going on. There's an erasure of our real history, leaving us permanently orphaned. And then there's a perpetuation of the concealment of the true nature of consciousness. And both of these things are kind of being done, wrapped up in a nice little bow together. And I don't have all the answers, but I feel like I'm very much onto something.
What do we think of the cave paintings and some of them depicting what looks to be like what people would consider gray aliens today? What do you think of those?
I haven't taken much time on those particular cave paintings. I couldn't even point to a specific one, but I would assume they're definitely referring to real beings that were here, but I would just assume that they were, humans, but just badly drawn. I don't know. I really have not looked into the cave paintings particularly. I'll be honest with you.
See, I'm always confused by the UFO community. It seems like a portion of them think that the government should disclose everything they know about the topic, which is never going to happen because they believe that extraterrestrials exist. The ones that are trying to force the government to, disclose what they know. Another
Right.
portion believe that disclosures already happen and that they don't need the government's approval. Another portion believes that they're physical craft. Another portion believes that they're interdimensional, extra dimensional, super ultra mega invisible. That's why you can't see them, which is the perfect excuse. Others think that there's going to be an alien invasion. It's really a shit pile mountain, right?
And a movement divided is no movement at all.
Right, where no one can agree with anything.
Right. It's unfortunate because all conspiracies like that. And even if we are onto certain things, we don't have all the cards. So we're always forced to speculate. And I feel for that whole community because I feel I was a part of it for so long. You know what I mean? But the smugness I can't deal with, and the blocking. Oh, the blocking. UFO Twitter is famous for the blocking. It's unreal. Try to be logical about anything. Try to give a different perspective. You are gone. It's unreal.
It is, and it's a very toxic community. I feel like it's the most toxic community out of any of the other communities. I would almost rather, probably shouldn't say this, but I'd almost rather deal with fundamentalist Christians.
Yeah, because you can agree with them on a number of other things. Unfortunately for the UFO community, and we won't get into this a sidetrack, but it does feel to me that the UFO community is being roped into a whole line of thinking from a lot of different angles. The transhumanism angle, there's a lot of different angles. They're kind of being roped into bridging all these different agendas together. But that's a story for another time.
Yeah, and one thing leads to another thing, and then you have to sift through so much nonsense, and unfortunately, a lot of it is wrapped up in money. Danny Sheehan, have you seen this?
Sheehan? Our newest addition to the moneymakers pile. Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Where if you donate $1,000, you will get privileged information on Danny Sheehan's website.
Dude, the world's falling apart when even the secret societies are just like, just pay us and we'll tell you everything. You don't have to do any rituals. Just come on, give us your money.
When a majority of this stuff really directly comes from government mis and disinformation, right?
Absolutely.
Surrounding the Paul Benowitz case, William Moore, all wrapped up in the Roswell incident in order to cover military technology and classified programs. It's literally the biggest cover-up in history of cover-ups, but it's not the cover-up that people believe that it is. The cover-up is that it is the extraterrestrials, not the other way around.
It's so crazy because we're so used to this kind of setup, being alternative thinkers or conspiracy theorists. We're always in this world, but watching it so clearly happen with the UFO thing, it's so weird because more people are getting interested in maybe the government is lying to us. Yeah, man. Yeah. Aliens are real. No. Wait. It's like, it's a honey trap for the newly awakened, if you will. But there's so many. The New Age itself is as well. The New Age deception, which is just a mockery of perennial philosophy on so many fronts. It's just, yeah.
And it's the biggest misdirection in the world, right? Getting people looking and searching for something that doesn't exist. That's the definition of a wild goose chase, right? You've heard that saying before, right, Andy?
Oh, yeah.
Well, you're on a wild goose chase. Well, the community has been on a wild goose chase for the past 76 years.
Yeah, and it's a manufactured one. I think I mean, it can be easy to discredit it or say it's just a bunch of idiots wanting to believe, and that can be part of it. But at the same time, there's so much that's been put out there. I think you and I covered it a little bit on my show about how, the idea of Betty and Barney Hill being abducted by aliens was not the original story, and it was pushed into the public. So it's like something is nefarious, whether it's not the same thing as what's being thought of as, the nefarious thing behind the curtain. It's so Wizard of Oz, really. That's what I think it is.
Well, I've studied a lot. I've done a lot of shows on these UFO cults, and
Yes.
that goes back into the 30s with the cult of I Am with Guy and Edna Ballard that I've talked about several times on here, and then it goes all the way up through the 50s. A lot of UFO cults started coming out in the 50s. The Seekers UFO cult with Dorothy Martin. And then you have the Aetherius Society cult with George King. You have the Ashtar Galactic Command cult with George Van Tassel. And then you have the Unarius Academy with Ruth Norman. And there's this big spring up in like the early 50s, and they all copy and regurgitate off of each other. But I've tracked that back to the 30s. I haven't figured out anything before that. But I want to get back to this this ancient history that you've done a lot of research into and get your conclusions of what was going on back then, because I've gone as far back as the 30s, and I've looked a little bit into Elena Blavatsky and a lot of the cult theosophists of that early age, which did incorporate a lot of extraterrestrial elements, and we get a lot of esoteric belief systems that came out of those early occult writers. What was going on back in as far as you've gone?
So it's cool that you brought the Theosophical Society, and also there's the Vril Society. That was another pretty crazy one, and it's interesting that kind of is tied into some of what I'm finding. It's at least what the Nazis thought that they were after, or thought that they were going to find, or something. But who knows? That whole war and that whole time period is a black hole, in my opinion. But yeah, so my passion was for the Anunnaki and the Sumerians throughout the years. I have every Zechariah Sitchin book sitting right here collecting dust, and I was all into that for so long. So when the Bach Saga kind of gut punched me and took a lot of the physical magic out of the world for me for a minute, it got me going back into all my old beliefs about aliens and things like that, about ancient history and everything, because supposedly the Bach Saga predates all of it, and all of our mythology can be traced back to this. So that's a whole other rabbit hole. But I started looking at the Anunnaki and to see if I could find if there was anything out there that would lend credence to the idea of them being human instead of from the stars. So what I found, it's funny because it was there. I put the cart before the horse, and they say to never do that, but seek and you shall find, because I talked to a man named Freddie Silva about it and his research, getting, on the boots on the ground information from the locals, from the stories that are passed down. I take a lot of value in oral stories that have been passed down through generations. And so does he. And he discovered that the Anunnaki was not the original name, but he was looking in Ireland first. He was looking over in the West, and what he found was the Tuatha De Danann, the original fairies or pixies of Ireland in their mythology and folklore. And it turns out that they're one and the same. And the Tuatha De Danann had an older name from when they were much further away in the Middle East, called Tuatha De Anu. So it's quite literally talking about the same deity on the surface of things, if that's what we're going to call it. So we're connecting vast portions of the earth that typically don't get connected when it comes to ancient aliens, or even really most of alternative history doesn't really talk about this. You know, someone with a massive Netflix special that can talk about hidden history and ancient ruins and stuff doesn't seem to come anywhere near Europe or Scandinavia or any of these areas. It seems to be not important, but I'm finding a lot of importance in, you know, the roots of our European areas of the world. So we can go over like some of the words I've found, but do you have any questions so far? Want me to clarify anything?
So you think that what people are calling the Anunnaki, I mean, obviously it's not their name. I don't believe that Zachariah Sitchin ever actually translated anything. He used other people's translations.
Yep.
And that's something that people don't really talk about or know. They want to make it seem like he's the one that translated them, but he didn't. He just compiled everyone else's translations and then created his own book.
Yep.
So books. So you think that what we call the Anunnaki are in a slightly more advanced human race that presented themselves as gods, and then we have misinterpreted them to be extraterrestrial?
Slightly. But the thing is, it's not that it's kind of like our meanings to words have been altered over time, whether that's a game of telephone or there's nefarious hands at work. I mean, at some point in time, there's absolutely nefarious hands at work, because at some point in time, it goes back to the church, basically usurping all of these old kingships and old dynasties and basically relegating them to fiction forever. You know, as Lawrence Gardner put it, not beguiling little folk like is written in folklore, but former kings and queens of the old world, basically. Yeah. And so the thing is there's a strong case for allegory in the Bible and other religious texts. And I totally get that. And I don't know what to make of that, because there's so much history involved in these old texts too. But you just have to know what you're looking for. Like, basically, they've taken everything that was history that they found, you know, disparaging to themselves, and turned it into fantasy. And it's become mythology and religion. The word fairy itself is, you know, it's a Greek word that originally is fair. And this term is related to a great house or a nobility. It has nothing to do with little creatures flying around whatsoever. And also, it's the same root as pharaoh, which also basically means great house or kingship. In the Gaelic world, certain royal families were said to carry the fairy blood, which in other words meant like the fate of mankind. This is telling the story of a supposed group of human beings that at least stylized themselves as sovereign shepherds of the rest of humanity. Whether they were or they weren't is up for grabs, but that's at least some of what has been written. And a lot of this information is coming from actual chronologies in privately held house libraries and royal families and things like that, their lineages. A lot of this has been found through trying to put these family trees together in an official way and seeing all these links and seeing where they go back to. You've heard of, you know, the Da Vinci Code and things like that, but the Da Vinci Code is more of a distraction than anything else, because the whole movie, the whole book shows us that the bloodline that they're talking about is only important because it's Jesus. But that is actually flipped in most of what I'm finding. It's that there's this Merovingian king line that Jesus may have been a part of if he was a real person.
I think the whole Jesus story is Mary coming up with an excuse of why she cheated on Joseph, and then they created an entire religion around it.
Well, sure. I mean, so here's the thing. I mean,
it was God. It was God that did it.
Take it a step further. Take it a step further. All right. It's more of it seems like an arranged pregnancy, almost like she was chosen to be the secret bearer of this old king line that was trying to stay afloat underground. Basically, that's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you look at it from that perspective. She she did
Also,
something that she wasn't supposed to do, so then the whole thing got so out of hand, just like the UFO community has gotten completely out of hand, and it turned into an entire religion that's killed thousands and thousands of people.
But the thing is so this is how the words have changed, because even if she did use that excuse back then, the gods did it, or it was God who did it. This word didn't mean what it means today back then. If we're talking about ancient history that's supposedly not written about, we were all just Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal and everything was shitty and we were nothing. We were just barely hanging on. If we don't follow that, then I don't know, man. It tells a much different story about this word God. It goes back to the Germanic phrase, very, very ancient, Proto-Germanic, meaning good, simply the good people or the good one. And it's rooted in gut. It was said like gut. And that's probably where we get the word gut, because that's where our intention is. That's where our will is. Go with your gut. It's like the brain in the belly. And that's what these old heathen pagan societies felt like, that gods were these enlightened people. Same with the idea that Christ means anointed. It's not a last name. It's not a surname or anything. It means anointed, but it doesn't mean he's king. It means king. It means crown, as in crown chakra, being of that presence in reality where you are able, mature enough and enlightened enough to rule. So that's kind of where this perspective is coming from with that term God. So even hypothetically, she uses that term, she's still going to get in trouble with Joseph, but Joseph ain't going to do shit because of who they were.
Well, when you think about it too, I don't even think vowels were invented at that time. So it would be impossible for the name to be God. Same with Jesus, right? Because A-I-O-U, G-O-D, there's an O in God.
Yeah, that's if we're following the standard academic version of the evolution of languages. And again, our history's cut off at a certain point. We're told that it's nothing before it. So unfortunately, that's not a complete story either,
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's see. Where should we go from here? You want me to just start giving you some of these names, some of these translations, like how about elves? I was really into Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings, and I always wondered as a kid why elves were so tall. I thought they were just like pixies and fairies. Well, it's because this word El from Mesopotamia means shining, and it means the same thing in Ireland. It means the same thing in England. This derivatives of it in Babylonia, Elu. Elohim is the plural of El. This is all relating to shining. And again, this shining notion is related right back to enlightenment, not some shiny being from the stars or anything like that.
Well, when you think of it, what would... No, I don't want to say that. I don't want to go there with it, but it almost seems like that a more advanced race of people could have lived on the earth, and then they go visit another group of people, and that group of people didn't know that they existed, and then they misinterpreted them as from not being from the earth, and they could have been extraterrestrials. I mean, I talk about the cult of John Frum all the time, and you may be familiar with that. It was a cargo cult in the during the Vietnam War, where American soldiers went to this village inside of the jungle during the Vietnam War, and these people thought that they were gods because they were bringing them supplies and food and all this, and they had never seen a helicopter, they had never seen a plane before, and they worshiped them. They worshiped them as gods. So if that's happening in modern times, I mean, like, could that not have happened several times throughout the past?
Yeah, it absolutely could have. To a certain point, these words meant what I'm saying they meant, but after a while, they've been lost. During the Carolingian dynasty in France, which basically was the end of the Merovingian dynasty, that's where a lot of our folklore comes from. That's where those original Arthurian legends start to pop up and everything. All these folklore and mythologies that paint things in a mystical way, which eventually now in the contemporary times has led to a more technological alien sort of lingo. But regardless, at one point it was this mystical idea. And yeah, I mean, it definitely could have been like that. But that's also where the word alien comes from originally. Like that word originally meant like stranger, from another culture, someone that doesn't share the same values.
Yeah, I mean, that makes logical and critical sense. It's interesting that you're talking about fairies right now because before we started the show, I was watching Emily Louise's channel. She just released a new video today.
Mm-hmm.
And she's talking about I think it's on Emily Weird Reads, I believe is the name of her YouTube channel. But she has a segment in there about fairies and like
Mm-hmm.
modern day fairies and how they became popular. And they actually became popular off of a hoax. These two little girls were hoaxing fairy photos. And a Theosophical Society got involved into it and they bought into the whole thing. And then it became this huge, big ordeal. And it wasn't until they were late in their lives that they confessed that they used like cardboard cutouts of fairies and staged all the photos.
And there's been so many since that just still keeps going, regardless of the reason why we caught on to it to begin with. People want to forget and they just want to be mystified because they've grown up their whole lives being told that the world is mundane. So now there's an opportunity where they kind of see that maybe the world isn't as I was told. But that at that point, the floodgates are open. And that's when people become really vulnerable,
Yeah, I want to believe so hard that I'm willing to throw everything else out the window.
Yeah, man. I mean, hey, look, I came into alternative thought, conspiracy, whatever you want to call it, when I was like 19 and I'm 38 now. And I came to it through psychedelics and I had the most mind-blowing experience. I went from atheist to I have no idea, because of psychedelics. So, I mean, I'm not knocking anyone's mysticism or beliefs necessarily, because we're all trying to get at an unnameable, ineffable thing that is from within. And that's kind of what all of these perennial societies thought like back then. They considered God good within, the higher self, the highest self, Paramatman in Hinduism. It's the highest self and it's synonymous with God. And whether that's true or not, shit, we're describing it in human language, so it's not going to come close to whatever the ultimate truth may be. But as far as I can tell, yeah, this place is pretty wacky and there's something going on in consciousness that's, beyond our understanding at this point. But I don't think the disclosure movement or the aliens as popularized by Hollywood and military funded Hollywood movies for 100 years has anything to do with it other than distraction, very purposeful distraction. It's not look wherever, don't look here. It's specifically look here. We're trying to rope you into things.
Yeah, I agree with that to a huge degree. And then when you look at the people that have tried to come out against it, Bill Moore stood up in front of the MUFON UFO conference in 1989 and tried to tell everyone it's all lies and made up garbage from the government. And they heckle and boo him off the stage.
Mm-hmm.
People don't want the truth because the truth hurts. And the biggest problem is that people need to realize that all of the stuff that is surrounding UFOs and extraterrestrials is stories. These whistleblowers and these insiders are telling you stories with zero proof and zero evidence. They're just
Mm-hmm.
giving you lip service, right? And the crap that comes out of their mouth is the most ridiculous, nonsensical garbage. And they always seem to cite dead people. Have you ever noticed that, Andy? they always bring up dead people to verify what they're saying, because
Right.
dead people can't be questioned or verified.
Right, of course. Or people on their deathbeds. I don't really know what to make of that, but I mean, who knows? I don't know. What do you mean by the dead people? Like, who are they referenced? I don't actually. I've never picked up on that.
Well, they've all cited some form. Lou Elizondo cited a dead congressman that verified that
Oh,
he worked at this ATIP program. Stephen
oh,
Greer
jeez.
has referenced several dead people that can't verify anything that he's saying.
Hmm.
It's just another tactic to use to make their stories seem more real.
Yeah, give them some weight to it. And I mean, some of the stuff that's being brought forward, like Stephen Greer's little presentation with all of his anecdotal evidence from all those witnesses. But it's like some of it that's being brought forward, you got to wonder, are all of these paid actors, or are some people in there? At what level do you get to know? And at what level are you just being duped yourself? Yeah, hey, don't tell anybody about what you saw. End of story. And then that person that's not supposed to tell anybody what they saw goes, oh my God, the alien thing's real. Holy shit. When it's like, well, no, you saw an experimental aircraft that we've been working on for 10 years, just like people did back in the 50s and 60s with the B-2 bomber, whenever that was a UFO too. They're all UFOs, right? I don't like, this is, sorry, this is a little bit off the subject, but the idea that this, again, I see a dialectic in the community, because it's not just the believers, it's the skeptics that are involved there too. There's some middle of the road, open-minded people in the right direction, but it's either super cynical, nothing's in the sky, nothing's ever been in the sky, you're all crazy, or it's aliens, it's reptilians, it's everything.
So,
I've seen shit in the sky. Absolutely. I saw something that does not make any sense. And I'm a logical person. I was sober and it was daytime. And I consider it a UFO sighting 1,000%, but I have no idea what it is. It's an unidentified flying object, and am willing to leave it at that. But I lean towards, well, maybe the government's fucking around, the military's doing something. Absolutely, that's like automatically the first idea, and I think a lot of other people are gaining that sentiment as we go, as well.
I think so too, and I think it's about time that it head in that direction, because it's been mystical and unobtainable for so long, when it's been right under our freaking noses the
Right.
entire time, right?
Well, again, it's. I mean, it has, but for some of us, it's been pretty tricky though, because we do believe some squirrely things because we can't make sense of things that have occurred. You know what I mean? It's tough because I mean, nothing that I say here tonight is going to change the minds of some people on UFO Twitter that are all in. Nothing you can say will change their mind, and it's weird because, yeah, I wouldn't believe the government either putting a UFO on the front lawn. It's really hard to say, but there's just too much evidence. And I think a lot of times, and this is a sensitive subject, but for a lot of people, even people that claim not to be religious, but they're spiritual, I think their fear of death gets in the way of taking these few last steps, because aliens leaves the door open. I see a lot of people in the UFO community that kind of cross over with the psychedelic and consciousness conversations. And that's the shit I dabble in all the time as well. But they're just linking the two together. They're keeping all the UFO crap that's being spewed, but just linking it to Terrence McKenna talked about aliens and DMT trips, so maybe it's that instead. And it's like, it's all misinterpreted. On the one hand, you're probably misinterpreting military craft. And on the other hand, you're talking about an experience that cannot perfectly be described when you get back from the experience. Like, that's why churches get built in one part of the world and mosques get built in another, because the spiritual experience is subjective.
Yeah, and it's going to be different for everyone. I mean, you can bring a group of people into an area and read something, and you're going to have 10 different interpretations of what you just read. I mean, that's why there's so many denominations of religion. That's why there's so many sects of Christianity, right? Because everyone gets
Absolutely.
something different from what's being presented.
Right. And if you ever have an argument, like as a, back in the day when we were all full of fire and just, I was yelling about God as like a young, stupid atheist. And it's like, those conversations never go well with anybody, even people that you're kind of on the same page with, because I mean, unless you don't believe there's just nothing, we just go in the dirt and this is all just matter and there's nothing else to it. Other than that group, like everything is interpretive,
Yeah, and I've had some experiences as well, but I don't ever claim to know what it is. I don't
No, the
ever
biggest
claim to
message from
know.
those experiences is typically you will never know, or you'll definitely not be able to describe it when you get back.
And we should, and I don't think they're meant to be explained. Right?
No.
And I think that that's an issue with the community as well, is that they want answers for what they saw and they're willing to take any expert gatekeeper's opinion and thought on it and take it to heart and then go out and profess that they know what's going on. It's exactly like the whole spiritual community's version of past life reincarnations, right?
Mm-hmm.
They'll prop themselves up with being someone famous or someone important way back in the day to make themselves look bigger and better and put themselves on a pedestal to other people. Oh, well,
Wilcock.
he was Amun Ra back in the day. He must know exactly what's going on. Let's pay him lots of money.
I was Edward Casey. I know all about the Illuminati.
Edward Casey, Moses, Akhenaten. I mean, I've heard it all by studying all these UFO cults. And
Dude, I love the guy on Gaia that tells us he's from Atlantis and he sings people's songs from Atlantis and stuff. That Mateus guy. Oh, I want him for kids' birthday parties. He's hilarious. Maybe not. I take that back. But he'd be a good carnival clown or something,
Yeah, it's just a way to make yourself feel more important and hopefully get more people to listen to you. It's that, and then you got to put a fantastical prediction in the mix, right? You got to make either the world's going to end on such and such date, or the extraterrestrials are going to be coming in 2035.
Right. And Lou Elizondo really did wrap it all up in a nice bow for everybody. He really did become Uncle America for so many people. Like, you can trust me. Don't worry. And listen, we're going to get you that information. We promise. Okay. And it's going to answer everything. You're going to have to question everything you ever learned. So this has to be a slow process. He's literally telling you, think spiritual, think what's happening after you die, be afraid, beg for this answer. Like, you need to know this because it's all tied in.
But not only that, I'm pretty sure he came out and said that he now believes that they're all demons.
Oh, I have seen that recently. The Christian angle is strong, man. Like, if you're, this is a lot of subject, but if you're like a Hollywood person and you want to be like red pilled, you got to be Christian. Like, it's either Christian or you're a Satanist. It's the dialectic. Again, it's red versus blue, man, all day long. But yeah, I love that these UFO Republicans are now freaking out about demons. It's like, you don't even know where that word comes from, you idiot. You think it's 2,000 years old and you think it's a red guy with a fucking pitchfork.
Yeah, that's
I will say
the one extreme to the other extreme that we've kind of been talking about, right? It's either they exist or all of it's fake, all of it's not real, they don't exist, they're space aliens or they're demons. It's
right.
one extreme or the other extreme. There's really no middle ground
the middle ground's in trouble. The middle ground's dangerous because that's where the theosophical shit is. That's where the new age is. And that's where all these government funded psychedelic projects are it's all being funneled into for the perception of these people that don't want to go left or right on this issue. And they follow this consciousness idea. I mean, Terence McKenna, this has been set up for a very long time, I think.
Talk to us about that. Where did that start with Terence McKenna?
Well, I mean, no, he's just my go-to example because, I mean, he is the psychedelic guru of even our generation, even though he was dead when I was like 10. He's still the guy. and he kind of rationalized so much for people, and me as well. I would listen to hours of his lectures on psychedelics and philosophy, life and death, things like that, and all of his crazy alien stories, which was definitely capturing me big time. I'm like, that makes sense, because I had all these experiences I could not account for. I've had a big upgrade to the considerations of what those experiences were, but back then it was much different. And I'm not saying I'm ahead of anybody. Many people my age feel the same way, looking back at these younger people that are waking up and suddenly finding all of our old heroes that we've shrugged off because we found out about them. I mean, Gordon Wasson, who brought the magic mushroom to the popular world in the West, was being paid by the CIA, and he was already a higher up at, what was it, some huge bank. So it's the counterculture has been manufactured from the start. It's just like Lenin did say, in order to control the opposition, we must lead it ourselves. So that never went away.
Yeah, see, I'm not in favor of putting a substance in your body to have some form of contact experience or spiritual experience. I mean, you can literally do that naturally through
Yep.
breath work. Like, you can release natural DMT in your brain that will give you that spiritual experience. The psychedelic route, to me, feels like a huge shortcut
Yeah.
into it for
It's
people
taking the
that,
jetpack to the top of the mountain, as if the journey to the top wasn't the point.
yeah. And if people only knew, I mean, it takes a lot of time and a lot of work, and you got to do it at a certain period of the nighttime when your melatonin levels are at the peak value, like 3 or 4 in the morning. But it is possible through practice, and that is a much realer experience. I haven't gotten all the way there, but I've come very close.
That's
And
great to hear, man.
and I feel like that the psychedelic version of that is a false version. It's not the real
Hmm.
thing. It's the synthetic version. It's this realm or realities version of it. It's not really you. You're not really experiencing anything. You're getting the what people would, it would be the equivalent of a AI photo of something real.
Mm, that's interesting. I like that perspective, because I mean, some of the lessons in those experiences in themselves are kind of showing you to not take anything that you're learning as necessarily real. So I don't know. I don't know. That's an interesting thought. I've never thought about that before, but that is really cool. And I'll have to ask a good friend of mine he's been meditating for probably 15, 20 years, and he definitely gets some crazy results from it. And I'll have to ask him about that, because he's also taken plenty of psychedelics. I've tried with meditation, and I continue to try. I haven't in a while, but I want to get back into it, because that is something, and I haven't done psychedelics in like 10 years either, but that is something I've always heard from certain people, that the goal is to, if psychedelics is what wakes you up, or if what gives you the initial push, that's great. But then spend the rest of your life trying to get back there without it. And I absolutely agree that that is the way. And I agree that the psychedelic push here is money making, of course, but I do think it's more than that. It's to control the mind. Absolutely. Just like it used to be. So instead of MK Ultra, we have what? Project Monarch. It's just open source MK Ultra.
That's exactly right. Rebecca says chemically induced is what's not real. And I would have to agree.
Mm,
Absolutely. I think that that's what makes it not real. It's what turns it into a form of in a hallucination, right? And any information that I feel that people have gotten from psychedelics, they've always been wrong. They've never
hmm.
been right. Like, it's not about like for things that's going to happen, right? If they get some kind of information while they're on psychedelics for things that
Oh,
are going to happen in the future, right?
yeah.
It never happens. It's always
No.
wrong, right? So that gives the perception that it's not real. Now, some people I know that has had psychedelic experiences, they're able to, they do get information about themselves and like
Mm.
what they need to do in their life. But any kind of prediction, any kind of something that you're being told that's going to happen in the near, it never happens. You know,
I
so
would
how credible can you really take that psychedelic trip as being real?
Well, I can only tell you from my own perspective, you know, and I do agree with a lot of what you're saying, but I think I find myself a little bit in between the poles there because, um, you know, and again, just from my personal subjective experiences, I was a kid who was into baseball and Green Day, and that was about it. And maybe chess with my dad. And I was a teenager, man. I was kind of just a nerd who liked not much music and baseball, whatever. What happened to me after psychedelics was I immediately became completely immersed in ancient philosophy. And I know that that's a path that many took even back in the 60s. I don't think that's necessarily the natural inclination is not a manufactured thing, but perhaps, you know, the starting point and the finish line, you know, maybe, you know, they have agents on both ends there, but whatever. Like what I'm saying is that the experience itself had me lost, completely chaotic and desperate for some grounding. And where I got my grounding and where I found my internal experiences written down were mostly from Buddhism. And I mean, I am hard pressed to say that Buddhism is just kind of silly nonsense and mythology. When it comes to me, it's a manual for the mind, a manual for consciousness, and disregard the deities because again, they're allegorical, and we're talking about the brain and people that have just done the work to figure out little bits and pieces. I think chemically induced, but I mean, there's got to be something to be said that it's the similar experience or a mimicry of the original, and maybe that's why maybe the mimicry is why the most of the time we're not able to bring anything back for the most part. But yeah, I don't know that those experiences were what put me in touch with myself, and I do think you know, put together in a lab like LSD was, or picking it straight out of the ground in mushroom form, or it being, you know, from your own chemistry being released in your body. It's all kind of a chemical that gives you access to every part of yourself. And that's from the top down. And so whatever's going on deep within consciousness itself, you know, which perplexes scientists to this day, and they have no answer for the hard problem of consciousness, you do get access to it, but it's just beyond language. It's beyond comprehension. But the reason why it seems so fake is because everybody comes back and thinks they're going to tell everybody the meaning of life, and they never can because it's not able to be spoken. It's beyond language. It's beyond our simple human minds. I mean, that's just my take, man.
Yeah, I agree with some of that to an extent.
I also
but
think that's why this is so important to them. I also think this is part of what's so important to steal spirituality into this very physical, material, alien world, or gods. It doesn't matter which one, as long as it's not within. They want you looking out there in one way or the other. So they got skeptics and cynics and believers and the pious, one hand in the other.
I just think that drugs are used, like especially when you know, psychedelics are used as a form to gather some kind of information which is perceived to be outside of yourself, and people don't disclose that information, then they're frauding people. And I
Yes.
think that that is unfortunately a lot of the contactee movement. A lot of
Yes.
it is drugs, psychedelics, whether that be acid or mushrooms, and they're using that as a catalyst to supposedly contact something outside of themselves. And they're not telling people that. And that's frauding people. And then they teach these courses on how to contact the extraterrestrials, how to contact the Galactic Federation, and none of them
Right.
ever get to be able to do that because they leave out the most important part, that they were under the influence of a psychedelic.
Yeah, that's a good one too. I mean, also you could just say that, maybe there is something to the experience of psychedelics where you encounter consciousness in such a state where it seems to be a plurality when it's not. It's like a kaleidoscope in a way. I mean, it's a very crude way to put it, but you could easily just know that about substances. Oh well, these substances do this to the brain, and then you just put that out there that what they're seeing is the aliens.
Yeah, and then there are people that have done mescaline that have lived like 5, 6 months in a completely different reality, and it was only 5 minutes here. What is
Hmm.
that? What's going on there?
Timelessness. I've
Like,
experienced that, dude. I experienced what felt like thousands of years on psychedelics. Um,
where you were in
Lifetimes
a
in the
different
past.
reality and in a different body, and you're or what?
No, I don't know if I give my ego credit or what, but no, I never felt like I went anywhere else. I always felt like, I mean, I kind of turn it inside out. It's kind of like Taoism or again Buddhism, where it's all one, man. Like we're like consciousness itself is like a singularity, and it expresses itself in duality as a multiplicity. I mean, that's even what Schrodinger said. Schrodinger said, in reality, there's only one mind. Multiplicity is only apparent. So, I mean, again, if this is close at all, I mean, I'm no scientist, I'm no, theologian or anything, but if this is at all close, it's like, okay, if smarter people than us that have been working on this a lot longer than us and have resources like crazy know something about this seems to be what they're obfuscating and taking away from and distracting from the nature of consciousness. Because it does seem like our ancients did have a pretty good handle on it.
Yeah, then that gets into, remote viewing, astral projection, what people experience whenever they're outside of their bodies, indies, out of body experiences, what's going on there? How can people, really remote view? Is this a simulation? You know what I mean? It opens the doors for
Too
uh,
many doors.
a lot of stuff. And
Yeah.
is indies and out of body experiences connected to psychic abilities? Because several people that have, claimed to be really good remote viewers have had an out of body experience. They've had some sort of astral projection or a near death experience. Then all of a sudden, that something switches in their mind and they're basically psychic. It's very strange. And I do believe that there's a really big connection there. I just don't think that going the synthetic route is the best way to do it. And
No, I
I'm
totally agree with you there, man. I do. I think that's important to say because just because it may get you there, it's not. Again, it's taking a jetpack to the top, and you got to take the journey yourself.
and people can be unprepared for that as well. They can eat like you can almost get perma burnt if you take too too many
Weird.
mushrooms,
Yeah.
dude.
Oh yeah.
Perma
I
burnt,
mean,
just fried, bro. Your brain's just scrambled, dude. You're a walking zombie.
I've seen it, man. I've seen some bad stories occur, and then seen it years later, man. Absolutely, it can be done.
But I also think that that was a big reason why these types of drugs and these types of compounds were used within the MK Ultra programs too, because it was a door opening way to get your mind outside of your body, and then they could mess around with your head and put things into your head. So it was like a wide open thing. But I've talked about it several times. The MK Ultra programs just weren't experimenting with LSD and mushrooms and all that. Lots of drugs
Oh,
came out of those programs: antidepressants, antipsychotics, Ritalin, Adderall, all came out of those MK Ultra programs and were tested on the patients within those programs before they were brought to the public. And
yeah.
people don't realize that. And when you when you tell someone that, they're like, "Oh, holy crap!" And then it's interesting because a majority of the population is on some form of pharmaceutical drug.
Oh yeah.
I think it's over 50% now of the United States. It was like 47% back with a study from 2014 to 2016. 47% of people in the United States were on some form of a pharmaceutical drug. And I guarantee that number has expanded way farther now.
Oh
And
yeah.
8 years later, it's gone nowhere but up.
I mean, that's the one thing I would say is like sort of positive about a lot of the spiritual new agey type people is they kind of lean towards going natural, you know? That's like saving grace over there, it seems. But I don't know. A lot of them are selling lots of supplements.
But then you can take it too far and you can be like Amy Carlson from the Love is One cult and think that colloidal silver
Right.
cures
We don't have to
everything,
eat.
and then freaking ingest gallons of colloidal silver every day and then die from it.
Right,
You
right.
know?
Or the breatharians and stuff like that that don't have to eat or drink anything. Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
it's an extreme, dude. You're on one side of the extreme or you're on the other side of the extreme, and there's just people that are caught in the middle of that. And I will never advocate for any sort of psychedelic use because you have no idea what kind of effects that's going to have on people's minds. You don't know what kind of place that they're in their life, and it could do more damage to them than it could possibly do good. I mean, you get somebody that has no idea what they're doing, they're by themselves and they're alone, dude, it's going to scramble their freaking brain.
Right. Yeah. My wife
Absolutely.
and I have had very, very like years and years long conversations about like if she should microdose like one time, you know, like that's how careful it has to be. It's not something to just say everybody should try it, you know, which is going on everywhere in pop culture right now, which is weird because now we sound like the old fogies that don't want anybody doing drugs. And it's like, well, fucking look into where it comes from, man. Look into, you know, I do agree with you that this is not the way. You know, it got me there, it got me interested in all these things, and it put me in touch with myself and so much more. But at the same time, I recognize pretty quick, like, all right, it's not addictive, but the idea that your essence, your worth, your soul, your connection to the universe and God or whatever you want to call it is in this little pill or this thing right here. I mean, it's a little bit harder to sell me on like mushrooms being in that same realm. It's like, all right, well, it's part of nature, man. It's hard to mess with that because we are nature. That's nature. It's, you know, it seems pretty symbiotic, but I'm definitely open to what you're saying about all of it because the true teachings from back in the day, it's leaning towards people are like making it out to be psychedelic use, but the original spiritual stories were from meditation, sweat lodges, ordeal, fasting, things like that.
Well, not only that, I mean, how much harm has actually come from the use of psychedelics? I mean, some people say that that was the whole cause of the Salem witch trials, was they got ergot poisoning, and ergot poisoning was a psychedelic, and they got it from the bread, and then they started saying that everyone was witches, and they killed them all.
See, I disagree with that because I have a whole different angle on the witch trials that it's like there was certain beliefs being held by these people that were considered witches that were against the, you know, status quo, the Christian religion and all that, you know. But
Well, tell us
yeah,
about that. What do you think was going on through your study?
well,
That
paganism.
was paganism.
Straight up. And of course, you know, that's of course associated with Satanism and evil and all that in a lot of the alternative world, unfortunately, which, yeah, it's been hijacked too. It's all been hijacked, man. It doesn't matter what part of society is like influential on a natural, instinctual level to humanity. It's been taken advantage of and ruined and distorted, you know?
Yeah, I would have to agree. And then when you look at all of these, I put a list together of the important points that you have to hit in order to be a UFO huckster, whistleblower, and insider. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Step one: you claim to have top secret information that no one else has. Step two: claim that you got that information from someone high up in the military or the CIA or top secret briefings, but never tell anyone their name. That's important.
Right.
Always wrap Roswell into your stories, right? Claim that the government knows about everything, all of the extraterrestrials, all the UFOs, and are responsible for a 7 decades long cover up of UFOs and extraterrestrials. Talk about free energy and
Yeah.
how long we've had free energy, but because of the government cover up, people can't have access to it. Use dead people as your source of information. Claim that people have been killed wanting to discuss the existence of extraterrestrials, and collect as much money possible for your disclosure effort. And claim that people are trying to silence you, and make a date for when the government is going to disclose those freaking aliens.
Perfect, man. I love that list. And the thing about silencing, all the people yelling about being silenced in that community are never being silenced. They're being promoted. But so are all the Mick Wests. All the cynical skeptics they're right in there with them. UFO Twitter is filled with both. It's not just one. You have your John Greenwalds, who he's a little bit more in the middle than some of it, because at least he's claiming most of what we're seeing is bullshit. But you have, you've done some interviews with some excellent people that are in that community, but kind of have a higher view of things. But a lot of the skeptics and the cynics that are pitching the very classical nothing's happening, they're also there, and they're also very popular on UFO Twitter.
It's not that nothing is happening. It's not that there isn't a cover up. The cover up is just that it's extraterrestrials. It doesn't mean that there isn't a phenomenon actually happening. I mean, of course, there's a phenomenon. I mean, something's going on, but it's
Sometimes,
not.
yeah.
It's not what
Some of the videos.
well, I would say all of the majority of the videos are faked.
Yes.
And that goes along with the Bigfoot footage. That goes along with the UFO footage, the extraterrestrial footage. I mean, people have been faking stuff, just like I was mentioning earlier about the fairies. That was back in the early 1900s.
Yeah, and before that, in the mid 1800s, there was a man named George MacDonald. I think it was George MacDonald. He wrote a book called Fantastes, or Fantastes, Phantastes. It was the first use of the word portal in the Western world, in Western literature, Western popular literature at least, describing a portal, this word portal, as a magical doorway. Before that, this word had always simply been a nautical term for doorway or porthole. And it's just funny to see the origins of where these things went into the nether realm from reality, because they were here. It's not that the idea of a portal was originally a magical thing. That's been taken by this mystical side. And that's kind of what I've been looking into from the ancient past perspective, because I'm finding it everywhere. Like we talked about the fairies, elves, dragons, same thing. All of it, the mythological, mystical terminology, it comes later, downstream from the origin of the use of these terms in other languages. So it's pretty wild.
And then you see like hoaxes that are taken, or that are blatant hoaxes that are taken as a fact, like the alternative 3 material, like the Orion conspiracy fake documentary, even the idea and the thought of an alien invasion came from a British TV series in 1965, right, called
I thought it was
Object
before that.
Z. Well, that's the earliest one.
Do you mean a fake alien invasion, or just an alien invasion itself?
Well, it was a fake alien invasion in the first season, apparently, and then in the second season, it turned into a real alien invasion.
Okay, because I thought Jack Valet reference like Project Bluebeam or like the origins of such a thing being something talked about during like World War One. Or no, I'm sorry. You know what? I take that back, because his interpretation of it at that time was that it would be like Muhammad or Jesus projected over the enemy or something like that, not aliens. So maybe Jock was just updating it to modern times or something. Maybe that's where it comes from. I don't know.
Well, I mean, media and television has been used to, and I got to add another one to that list of 10 things on how to be a UFO whistleblower and huckster. Is number 11 is fake alien invasion, baby. Aliens are coming and they're going to do us in, right?
Yeah, the Nazi that worked at NASA told me before he died. So trust me, bro.
And I was the only one that heard him say it.
But then look at his gravestone, man. He talks about the firmament so clearly. The earth is flat, so none of the alien shit matters anyway, man.
It's unbelievable the things that have been compounded upon, regurgitated, and taken as fact, right? And
Yeah.
those are the main points you got to hit if you want to be a UFO whistleblower, and it's pretty easy, right? And these people are making money hand over fist, right? Millions of dollars these people are racking up. And
Oh,
here,
yeah.
people like me and you are struggling to get people to support with $5 and $10, right?
Right.
Is it because I don't claim to have top secret information that nobody else has?
Partly. You have to either do that, or you have to be one of the bandwagoners of this perspective on the phenomenon. Because if you are all in, and we know plenty that just don't question these things and take the provocation as an invitation and be like, all right, this is going to be fun, this is entertainment, then man, I don't know. It's a mess.
Is it because I don't claim to have people high up in the CIA or the military giving me information? I'm not receiving top secret briefings.
That's part of it. And you don't have them on your show. Yeah.
Well, the real big news flash here is that these people that are making thousands and sometimes millions of dollars off of this garbage don't either. They just saying that they do. Right? So really the joke's on them, right?
Yeah.
And shame on those people for supporting these people, right? To bring you disclosure. Oh, yeah. How long have people been saying that disclosure is coming, right?
Oh my God, since the 90s, or probably before that. It's just, it's a long road out of hell. It's the reason, one of the reasons why I kind of fused my love for history with the whole UFO alien thing was because when I was still kind of in it, back in 2016, I want to say, is when Bob Lazar first went on Joe Rogan. And I remembered Bob Lazar from when I was younger. I remember seeing all the clips and everything. He was amazing, and then got lost to history for a while. And here he is again. And it's like, oh my God, he's on Joe Rogan. And he mentioned just very, very briefly that one of the finds may have been from an archaeological dig. And that was the gun that set the races off, because ever since, that has been slowly been leaked into the narrative by these talking heads that claim to know so much. And it seems strategic. Like they're slowly pushing that in so that eventually they can go, and all the gods were aliens, obviously. So therefore our space opera is complete, and everyone's just gonna be like, yep, we're on. Yep. Anunnaki. Yeah, cool. Like, no question. And I think it'll bury our ancestors forever, in my opinion, because I do think these are humans that we're talking about. And there's a reason why their history is being buried. And we don't have all the pieces.
Well, I think that argument would support the notion that it was an ancient civilization.
Yep.
That was here. That they are.
But why?
They're not from other planets.
But you got to wonder. I mean, there's a million whys, right? Like that's the problem. Again, we run into so much supposition when it comes to, okay, I got you. So now what? Why do they hide the ancient civilization? Why does the world and humanity have to be 7,000 to 8,000 years old? Like it's ridiculous, but why? It's hard because there can be a million answers to that why based on every bit of research you have or haven't done, or information that's available or not available. And I guarantee it, most of the stuff that we get is available because it doesn't harm them. You know, why? That's what the UFO, I mean, particularly that's why the UFO community really needs to look in the mirror. I mean, why this evil government that's been hiding everything, suddenly everything that's coming out is okay. No one's getting killed. No one's, no one's going missing. Come on.
Well, I think the big why is when it comes to history is because they don't want to go back and revise what they have already been teaching for 100 years now, right?
Yeah, I think
And
it's just the collapse of careers and stuff.
they don't want to admit that they are wrong. So they're going to double down on it, right? They don't want to revise that kind of stuff because then that makes them look like they were wrong the entire time. And if they were wrong the entire time, what faith and trust are people going to put into the establishment? So I think that that's a big reason. Rebecca says, where's that? Oh, Sandra says she has the book Alternative 3, rare book now and expensive. And that's the problem with the Alternative 3 book and the subsequent documentary, is that it was presented as real, and the book was put into the non-fiction category when it was 100% made up and was completely fiction.
Kind of like Admiral Byrd's diary.
Exactly like Admiral Byrd's diary.
Do you know much about that topic? Because I'm fascinated by that. I'm fascinated by how many conspiracy theorists link it to Antarctica and Operation High Jump, when it was an Arctic journey that was described in that fake ass journal. Did you know that?
Yeah, they want to link the fake diaries of Admiral Byrd to Operation High Jump, like that he had been there before, which then confirms the inner Earth theory that supposedly Admiral Byrd flew his plane into a big crater inside of the South Pole, and then met with these inner Earth beings. And then they want to believe that whenever Operation High Jump happened after World War II, that he went back, and then the beings that told him in his first journey from his fake journals not to come back, right? And then he comes back again, and then they come out with their UFOs and decimate his entire fleet of his naval ships.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's fascinating because we link that journal to, like, yeah, this is part of the secrecy around like the Treaty of Antarctica and why we can't go there. It's like, but that underground fantasy story from the journal is in the Arctic. It's at the North Pole. So what is everybody talking about? But I do find it interesting because, like, the history that I'm looking at of these words and where the words came from, who was using them, it is bringing me back to like the Proto-Indo-Europeans, the Proto-Germanic people, and the Grail quest and all that kind of stuff. And of course, there's a lot of lies in here too, but there's also parsed out linguistics that check out when you go to multiple etymology websites. You're like, oh, okay. So the word elven does just mean shining, and it has nothing to do with a creature that is an elf,
I showed a clip of Admiral Byrd on the show with Shane the Ruiner not too long ago. I don't have it on my computer because I cleaned up my computer, but a lot of people were misinterpreting what Admiral Byrd was saying whenever he got back from Project High Jump.
Yeah.
He was talking about how down at the South Pole, it's important because there's a over excess of oil down there. It's got more oil underneath the ice at the South Pole than anywhere in the world.
Another thing that was misinterpreted, something that he said on public television and was not killed or anything, was that there was so much land beyond the pole. I'm sure you've seen that clip that people run with, but he was clearly talking that they thought it was a friggin' ice cap, and they didn't realize there was so much green and lush areas of Antarctica. I mean,
yeah, he was referring to the South Pole when he was talking about that land beyond 12.
Absolutely.
He
Yeah.
wasn't talking about more extra land outside of
No. And my
Antarctica.
God, why would he have been able to say that? Why wouldn't they could erase the NASA tapes, but they can't erase this? Like, how has that been perpetuated for fucking 60 years longer, right? But yeah, the interesting part about all the history I'm finding is it is a lot of history that seems unfavorable, and it does equate slightly to the fantasy that was in the journal about the tall, pale skin people that were higher race and all this kind of stuff. I mean, this is literally superior race shit from Himmler and the Nazis. It's the same kind of mentality, which is weird that it's fake because someone put it out there, you know? It's really weird. It's like some sort of double, triple propaganda.
Yeah, some kind of weird magic.
But it's fake nonetheless, and it was forwarded. What's great is that there's at least a version out there that was officially forwarded by a sci-fi author who years earlier had written a book about underground subterranean aliens that were obsessed with fucking climate change. So what a coincidence. He really wanted to write the forward for that journal, you know?
Yeah, and then it just gets taken as fact, and real fiction gets incorporated into some form of truth, and then it becomes so confusing that people don't know what to believe anymore. And that's been a major play for them as well, right? You put out so much information that people have no idea what to believe, so then the truth gets buried within the falsities and the lies.
Absolutely, man.
Jenna Banana, how's it going, Jenna Banana? Good to see you. Disclosure is just them allowing the masses to see what's already there anyway, or the egregores, or a mystery, or truth of history, power, or of foresight. What if we are hiding it? Cause it will freak some people out. Oh, there's a second part of this. Sorry. Thank you, Jenna Banana. Yeah, what do you think about egregores? I talk about egregores on here all the time. Are you familiar with the concept?
I am a little familiar with the concept. Just I know that in popular fiction and TV and books and movies and stuff like that, an egregore like literally comes to life and becomes your own personal Frankenstein and kind of that kind of thing, right? And it's not like that at all, right? It's like, to me, an egregore is what? It's like the manifestation of thought, right?
Yeah, it's the energy and belief that you put into something, then in turn kind of manifests in your reality. Other people and other civilizations call them golems. Some people call them egregores, topas. Pretty much the exact same concept.
And I think once again we're taking things way too literally, because I mean, what's the difference between that and, you know, being an insanely possessive boyfriend and desperately trying to make sure that the girl is loyal and not cheating on you, and you become the guy that you lose her, right? Like, you become what you didn't want to happen. You literally are focused on it so much that it occurs. Yeah. You know, and I do believe that that's kind of what egregore, or this whole concept in any culture, is meant to represent. I mean, alcohol, right? Al Ghul, and everybody immediately goes, so it's a demon. It's like, well, yeah, but allegorically, because it poisons you, and so does depression, and so does, you know, that's demonic possession in my opinion.
Jenna Banana says, "Damn, that's my last boyfriend." Sorry to
You're
hear
the
that,
egregore. She's Jenna is the egregore.
Yeah, I mean, that it kind of seems like that, like a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, like a self-manifestation of you're concentrating on something you don't want so badly that you inadvertently create it in your reality, like a reverse form of manifestation.
You can influence others to think a certain way. So think of egregores in that too. I mean, our entire modern culture is an egregore. And I don't know who fucking made us think about it and create it. But yeah, I think we grow up on Star Wars and Harry Potter. You know, magic in Harry Potter is lightning coming out of a stick. Like, that's not magic. Magic is sleight of hand. It's misdirection. Whether that's repeating mantras every night so you trick and sleight of hand your subconscious into forming new thought patterns and bettering your life, or it's a guy pulling a fucking rabbit out of his hat. It's misdirection. So right off the bat, the campaign to materialize and physicalize and personify magic or spirit or these concepts of God, that's what's going on. The phenomenon, right? They put specific tangibilities to it, and they've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, the broad spectrum of weird things that can happen, and I'm not a disbeliever in weird things happening. I think weird things happen all the time in our reality.
This
Strange
place is
things.
wacky. Consciousness is weird.
Sometimes it's wacky upside down universe, unicorn land, and we can't make sense of it, and my non-belief in physical extraterrestrials doesn't mean that I believe that no supernatural, weird, mystical things don't happen. I think that they do, and I've experienced them. I just don't believe we're meant to know what that is.
Yeah,
I
man.
think it's meant to be a mystery. I think it's meant to expand our consciousness in some form, in some way, and open our mind to other possibilities. We're not supposed to understand it.
Yeah, it's the, literal expansion is the point. So as you go, why, what, where did that come from? That's pushing it out. But to expect that you're going to find literal conclusions, to these big questions, that's where people get lost big time. And
they're trying to fit worldly. Yeah, they're trying to fit worldly solutions into a spiritual problem. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No problem. Well, I used the mountain metaphor earlier, like psychedelics were the jetpack to the top instead of taking the journey, and it's like that everywhere. It's these people that think they come to conclusions. That's just them stopping at a vista 3/4 of the way up the mountain and saying, this is my summit. That's what that is. There's more to go, but you have to be brave enough to really, I think it really does come down to shrugging off more personal beliefs and falsehoods. And I think a lot of us harbor more of them than we think. A lot of us like to think that we've shrugged it all off, and I am living the highest version of myself now as I, parade this around and make sure everybody knows it. You know what I mean? Like there's so much fakeness there. So yeah.
Yeah, you got to make sure and let everybody know exactly what you're doing, my friend. Don't do it out of the goodness of your heart, or you're supposed to do it. You got to let people know that you're doing it because you're expecting some kind of reward or something in return, right? That seems to be the way the society works. Rebecca, mostly asking questions just leads to more exciting questions. And that's what should happen.
Absolutely. What do they say? The destination, well, I don't even know, but yeah, the journey is the point.
The desolation of smog. Getting back into Lord of the Rings.
Of course. Hell yeah. Dude, Tolkien was an Anglo-Saxon professor of language twice over. This dude knew what he was writing. He was recreating lost history. Absolutely, man. There's too many parallels. And, that is a group that gets made fun of for sure. People that just take Lord of the Rings too seriously. And I used to kind of make fun of it too, until I understood why they were taking it seriously. Not like the movies are real. It's the literature and Tolkien's unbelievable intellect with language and what he knew about ancient European culture.
He must have been an incarnation of Moses, bro.
Probably.
You think that if he was around now, he would claim that he was a famous reincarnation of someone in the past?
No, I don't think so, man. I think Tolkien was a real one. I think that's why he wrote the stories the way he did. He could have come out and be like, done lectures, right? And paid. Well, he got paid, obviously, but still, like, he could have done lectures on a nonfiction front and said, this is what I've discovered about European culture and European history and this and that. But instead, he put it into Lord of the Rings. And think about the time and place he was writing it.
That's true. Well, to wrap up here, brother, I want to talk a little bit about get a little bit more deep into this whole alien invasion topic, because I don't believe that that's ever going to happen. But it's a very poignant topic in the community, that people think that it's a very plausible idea and a very plausible thing to do, and I just don't see it in that fashion. I don't think that it can ever be pulled off. I think if anything happens first, it's going to be, and I'm not going to get political here because this isn't a political show. I'm just giving a generality. I think if anything, it's going to be a war. We're going to be into a big war. I mean, that's really what a lot of this stuff boils down to. It's not going to be an alien invasion. It's going to be possibly an invasion, but it's not going to be like what people think that it is. What's your thoughts on the whole alien invasion angle? We've seen so many people tout this idea. Randy Kramer was a big person that came out and was talking about this alien invasion. Stephen Greer came out and talked about this a really long time ago, that there was going to be an alien invasion, and he's like, no, wait a minute, all the aliens are good. They all have our best interest at heart. No duality or polarity there, like
Right.
we have here on the earth with good people and bad people. No, all the extraterrestrials are good and they have our best interest.
Well, just a quick note on that. I think it's funny that people think extraterrestrials are these highly advanced spiritual beings that we can relate to all the old sages and stuff like that. Why? They're not at their highest potential. They're still desirably seeking things. That's not spiritually attained. That's not, I am everything I need to be and have everything I need. You know what I mean? That ain't spiritually advanced. That's colonization, if they were here. You know what I mean? So that's just that little tidbit. But on the alien invasion, like the real one, no. But fake alien invasion, Project Bluebeam thing, I think you hit the nail on the head, man. I think it's, if anything, it would just be a massive war. And maybe if we started to frame some homework in this light, we'd probably see multiple angles where the alien invasion will be one and there'll be 7 other things. So at the end of it, no one will be able to say who ruined all their lives. Like total chaos, cognitive.
I just think that there's other more proven ways to do it, other than just going fantastical with an alien invasion. Like there's way better ways, way easier ways, proven tactics that's worked over decades and decades, that are way more feasible to do than a real alien invasion or a fake alien invasion.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that's the case. They would probably just do a war. I mean, they can blow things up. They know how to do that. And I again, there's a middle ground with the technology too. I'm not claiming anything from ancient times. I don't think that's the case at all. I think technology had a much different meaning to it. But when it comes to advanced technology being hidden, that's a very real thing, and it's always gone on. Like if you look at the creation of the first gigabit or gigabyte processor and when it hit market, I think it's like 30 years or something like that. I can't remember. But I mean, this is just something that goes on all the time, and it's been done in our military forever. So the idea of them being able to just annihilate cities and stuff like that, and then yeah, maybe some people would blame it on aliens, but there's plenty of us. There's probably more of us that wouldn't blame aliens, even in the face of destruction, so there could be cognitive dissonance about, the destruction of major cities or something like that. That's just a hypothesis,
I mean, everyone has phones now, right? They have the ability to whip out their phone, take a short little video, and post it online for anybody to see.
Yeah.
So the idea and the thought of that happening, especially like what you were talking about earlier, with them wanting to use it to bring Muhammad back or bring Jesus back or whatever like that. People have phones. Would it not seem pretty suspicious whenever Muhammad, Jesus, Krishna, and everyone all comes back at the exact
Well,
same
yeah.
time?
Again, that was that was back in during like World War One. That was supposedly a plan. No one had cell phones back then. But no, again, I don't think it will look like an alien invasion at all. I don't think they'll try with holograms or anything like that. I think people will see whatever technology they are working with at the top tier level that maybe a lot of our military knows about or something, but there'll be plenty of crazy people running around claiming it was aliens maybe, and that might be enough.
Yeah. Could be, brother. I don't know. I don't know what the future holds. Not going to make any predictions. Just going to do it. Keep doing the show. Keep talking about what I want to talk about. And thanks so much for coming on, brother. Really appreciate your time. Can you let people know where to find you online?
Yeah, man. And I agree. Keep doing your thing and just try to love everybody as much as you can and try to give as much as you can. Yeah, you can find me at The Deep Share on social media. I'm on every podcast platform that I can think of. I'm on YouTube and Odysee. And yeah, you can also go to thedeepshare.com. I just got my website up recently, officially running. There you can go.
Oh man, you're fancy, bro. You got a website,
super fancy.
dude?
That's
Holy
silly.
crap,
It's just basically a hub to link to everything else. I got my store. You can go visit the Deep Store and get some merch to piss off your family members. And it's right up your alley because if I'm trying to rehumanize history. We're trying to take it out of the hands of the fantasy folks. So yeah, but yeah, go check out my stuff. Thank you again, Ryder. I appreciate you having me on, man.
It's been a fun chat. I hope everyone's enjoyed it. Good to see everyone in the chat. Noble Truth. Thanks for being a member, brother. You can sign up. Everyone can sign up to be a member, and I can put out amazing content. But right now, it's just Noble Truth holding it down. For the Rider Rangers members, there's a little join button on the title of this video where you can sign up and support the show monthly for $4.99. Mean a lot to me if you can do that, and I can start doing members only content. Jesse James, good to see you. Jenna Banana, Rebecca, Savage Lee, good to see you. Thanks for being here, everyone, and please be sure to hit the like button to help the channel and the algorithm. Share, subscribe, hit the bell icon as well for notifications, and we'll see you guys next time.